Let's face a truth most people run from. A truth that doesn't knock, it crashes in. Quietly for some, brutally for others. And here it is. Nobody cares. Not about your excuses. Not about your heartbreak. Not even about your potential. At first. That might sound cruel, cold, like the world is indifferent to your struggle, and maybe it is. But sit with that discomfort. Really sit with it. And you'll start to notice something surprising buried underneath. Freedom. Because once you stop needing the world to understand you, to validate you, or to cheer for you, you begin to take back your power. You stop trying to be understood and start understanding yourself. You stop explaining your dreams and start building them in silence. You stop waiting for applause and start showing up for you day in, day out. Let me ask you, if no one ever noticed your effort, would you still keep going? If yes, that's where your strength begins. See, we weren't put on this earth to be liked or noticed. We're here to grow, to become resilient from the inside out. And real strength. It isn't loud. It doesn't post daily victories. It doesn't crave attention. It's forged in silence, choice by choice, morning after morning, when no one's looking. That's the Stoic way. That's the path of inner power. No clapping, no cameras, just clarity, purpose, alignment. So if you've ever felt unseen, unheard, invisible, good. That's your call to stop outsourcing your worth. That's your moment to reclaim your focus, protect your energy, and start building a life that holds even when the spotlight is off. This isn't about being numb. It's about being free, because the moment you let go of the need for the world to care, is the moment you begin to care about what really matters. Your character, your direction, your discipline. And that is where peace begins, not in the noise of praise, but in the quiet of becoming. Today, we dive into 12 Stoic lessons, not for applause, not for views, but to remind you, your greatest power was never outside of you. It was always waiting within. Let's begin with lesson 1. 1. Your worth doesn't depend on applause. Have you ever really asked yourself, would I still do this if nobody clapped? It's a gut punch of a question, one that strips away performance and demands truth. Because here's the uncomfortable reality. So much of what we do to be seen. For the likes, for the praise, for the nods of approval. But applause is slippery. It's moody, fleeting, biased. If your identity is tied to it, you'll always be chasing something that was never meant to define you. Stoicism teaches us your worth isn't out there. It's in here, in the alignment between your actions and your values. Are you staying honest when it's inconvenient? Are you practicing discipline even when no one sees? Are you choosing what's right over what's easy? That's the foundation. That's the beginning of real worth. Think of the sun. It never begs to be noticed. It just rises quietly, consistently, powerfully, and still, it lights the world. That's the energy you must embody. Silent strength. Unshakable direction. Not chasing admiration, but radiating truth. Because when you build a life based on who you really are, not who they expect you to be, you don't just survive, you shine. Would I still do this if no one clapped? If you answered yes, then you've already stepped onto the path of unshakable inner power. So what happens next? You stop waiting for applause and start creating a life that's worthy not in the eyes of others, but in the integrity of your own choices. So the next time you feel invisible, overlooked, unappreciated, pause and ask yourself one simple thing. Am I proud of the way I showed up today? If the answer is yes, that is your applause. That is your power. Because the dignity of living in alignment with your values, that's something no one can take from you. And unlike claps and compliments, that kind of worth doesn't need to be validated. It simply needs to be honored, listened to. External validation is a trap. Why do we care so much about what people think? It starts early before we even realize it. A smile from a parent, a gold star from a teacher, a like on your first post. Tiny moments of approval, each one conditioning us slowly, silently, until one day our compass shifts. We stop asking, "Is this right for me?" and start wondering, "Will they approve?" But the more we chase that feeling, the external nod, the public praise, the more we drift from ourselves. We become performers in a play we didn't write, acting out roles for an audience we didn't choose. And somewhere in the act, we forget who we were before the applause. Stoicism cuts through that illusion like a blade. It reminds us that validation is seductive, yes, but it's also a form of voluntary slavery. The philosopher Epictetus once warned, "If you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid." Why? Because real growth doesn't always look graceful. Sometimes it's awkward, unpopular, even isolating. And if your choices depend on the crowd's approval, you'll never risk becoming who you're meant to be. You'll stay safe but small, liked but lost. There's something heartbreaking about needing permission to be yourself. Something tragic in waiting for others to co-sign your direction before you dare to move. Here's the truth. People are fickle. Their opinions often say more about them than they do about you. One day they'll cheer for you. The next, they'll criticize you for the very same thing. If your identity rises and falls with those waves, you'll drown. But when you detach, when you reclaim your inner anchor, something changes. You become steady, grounded, not because the world agrees with you, but because you agree with you. Take a look around. How many people are living lives that aren't truly theirs? Choosing careers to please their parents, posting for likes instead of meaning, staying silent in rooms where their voice matters just to avoid being judged. That's the cost of external validation. It doesn't just dim your light, it rewires your sense of self. It teaches you to shrink, to shapeshift, to hide. But freedom, it begins the moment you no longer need to be seen. The moment you realize that real peace isn't found in claps, it's found in clarity, the power to stand tall and say, "This is my path." Whether you clap or not, that's strength, that's maturity, that's stoicism in action. So, let me ask you, if no one noticed your effort tomorrow, would you still keep going? Would you still speak your truth, create your work, live with intention? If the answer is no, then maybe your motivation was never truly yours. Maybe it was rented from the crowd. But if the answer is yes, then you found something rare, something real. A source of strength that no one can take from you. That's what you build a real life on. Not applause, not attention, but alignment. So let go not of connection, but of dependency. Give yourself permission to walk alone sometimes, to be misunderstood, to be fully, unapologetically you. When you no longer need others to validate your life, that's when you begin to truly live it. Because sometimes freedom isn't loud, it's quiet. It's the peace of not needing permission. Lesson 3. Focus on what you can control. How much of your stress comes from trying to control the uncontrollable? Really pause for a moment. Think about it. The traffic jam you can't escape. The opinions people have of you. The timing of an opportunity that didn't arrive. The behavior of someone you love who just won't change. We spend so much of our mental energy fighting shadows, wrestling things far beyond our reach, as if our worry could somehow rewrite reality. But it never does. It just drains us. Stoicism calls this out with clarity. Epictetus put it simply and powerfully. Some things are up to us, and some things are not. Wisdom begins the moment we learn the difference. So what is within your control? Your thoughts, your attitude, your choices, your response, not your reaction to what life hands you. That is your domain. Everything else, that's noise. This doesn't mean you become indifferent to people or stop caring about the future. It doesn't mean you stop dreaming or changing what you can. It means you stop suffering over things that aren't yours to fix. You let go of the need for the world to behave according to your expectations. And you start choosing how you behave, no matter what the world throws at you. Picture two people facing the same challenge. One collapses into blame, panic, and frustration. The other takes a deep breath and asks, "What can I do right now?" That moment, that shift in focus is where real power lives. Not in controlling the outcome, but in mastering your presence within it. It's not about controlling the storm. It's about becoming the calm within it. Take relationships, for example. You can't control if someone chooses to stay. You can't force someone to love you, to understand you, or to value what you bring. But you can absolutely control how you treat yourself in their absence. You can choose dignity over desperation, stillness over chasing, clarity over confusion. And in doing that, you reclaim your strength, not by changing them, but by refusing to give away your power, even in small moments. This shift matters. You can't control your boss's mood, but you can control how you respond to their tone. You can't control the economy, but you can control how you budget, adapt, and prepare. That's not weakness, that's precision. That's the difference between a scattered life and a focused one. A life that doesn't waste energy chasing ghosts, but stays rooted in what can actually be shaped. And here's the beautiful paradox. The more you focus on what you can control, the more peace and power you gain. Not power over others, but influence over your own experience. You become less reactive, less anxious, less bitter. Why? Because you've stopped fighting reality and started working with it. That's what the Stoics called living according to nature, aligning yourself with the rhythm of life instead of constantly resisting it. So ask yourself right now, what am I gripping that isn't mine to fix? What energy am I wasting trying to force something outside my control? And more importantly, what is in my control today? What is one small action I can take? With focus, with integrity, with full presence. That's where true peace begins. Not in controlling the world, but in mastering the way you move within. What happens when the world cheers for something that doesn't sit right with you? What do you do when the crowd moves one way, but your quiet inner voice tells you to go the other? Because it's one you'll face again and again if you're serious about living a life of integrity. 4. Live for your inner standards. Not the crowd. These aren't just abstract questions, they're the everyday dilemmas of anyone trying to live with honesty and principle. Because the truth is, society is loud, persuasive, and wildly inconsistent. What's admired today may be mocked tomorrow. What gets applause this year might be condemned the next. If your values shift with the tides of public approval, you'll always be chasing a moving target and never quite feel at home in your own skin. The Stoics saw this clearly. They believed that true peace doesn't come from obeying public opinion. It comes from living in alignment with your inner standards, your personal code. Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher emperor himself, wrote, "The approval of the crowd is a weak and unstable foundation." Why? Because the crowd doesn't know you. It doesn't see the battles you fight quietly. It doesn't care about your values, your path, your private courage. It rewards what is loud, not necessarily what is right. And if you start living for that, you lose your voice in the noise. You trade your truth for applause. So, what's the alternative? Think of a compass. No matter the weather, the storm, or the chaos, it always points north, quiet, steady, unshaken. That's how your values should be. Not decorative, not performative, but guiding, anchoring, whole. And when you live by them, even when no one notices, you begin to feel something deeper than pride. Peace, not the peace that comes from being praised, but the kind that whispers, "I chose what was right, not what was easy." Let's make this real. Suppose you're at a job where cutting corners gets rewarded. Everyone's doing it. You're told, just follow the system. Don't overthink it. Do you go along? Or do you hold the line knowing it might cost you? Or you're in a group of friends who mock others just to bond. Do you stay silent to keep the peace? Or speak up, even if it gets awkward? These might seem like small moments, but they shape you. They carve your character. They define your integrity. They tell the world, and more importantly, yourself, who you really are. And the more you live this way, the stronger you become. Not louder, stronger. Because living by your inner standards isn't about making a scene. It's about becoming unshakable. You walk into a room, and you don't need to perform. You don't need to impress. You don't need to shrink. You just are, clear, grounded, true. And yes, sometimes it's lonely. People won't get it. They'll question your silence, your boundaries, your choices. But that's the price of authenticity. And it's worth every step. Because what's the alternative? Living a life that pleases everyone else, but secretly betrays your own values. That's not peace. That's quiet torment. So ask yourself honestly, if no one ever approved of your life, would you still be proud of it if your actions were judged only by your own conscience? Would you still feel aligned? Those questions matter more than any cheer ever could. Because at the end of the day, when your head hits the pillow, it's not the crowd's voice echoing in your mind. It's yours. Lesson 5. Criticism and praise mean the same in Stoicism. What if I told you that praise and criticism are really just two sides of the same coin? And that both can be equally dangerous if you're not grounded? At first, that might sound strange. After all, praise feels great, right? It's a warm rush, a high five to the soul, a signal that you're on the right track. And criticism, that's the sting. The knot in your stomach, the need to defend, explain, or fix. But here's how the Stoics saw it. Praise and criticism to very different sounds. But both are external judgments. They come from outside your soul. And if your peace rises with one and falls with the other, then ask yourself, who really holds the reins of your emotional world? Let's get honest. If someone insults you and it ruins your day, who has the power? If someone compliments you and you suddenly feel alive and validated, who's still in charge of your sense of self? In both cases, it's not you. That's why the Stoics practiced emotional indifference to both extremes. Not coldness, not arrogance, but in a steadiness, a calm center that doesn't get tossed by the winds of opinion. Epictetus said, if you are ever tempted to look for outside approval, realize that you have compromised your own integrity. Why? Because every time you let someone else's opinion determine your self-worth, you quietly hand them the keys to your inner world. And without realizing it, you become addicted to the noise, to applause, just to feel worthy, to silence, and suddenly feel invisible. Let's bring this into real life. Imagine you've poured your heart into something. A project, a piece of art, a hard conversation that required courage. Then someone praises it suddenly. You're on top of the world. But moments later, someone criticizes it and now your confidence spirals. Now pause. Did your work change? Did the value of your effort suddenly vanish? No. Only the voices around it changed. And that reveals something crucial. Your sense of worth is still external, still fragile. But Stoicism isn't about numbing yourself. It's about reclaiming your power, not by rejecting feedback, but by recentering your worth around what actually matters. Of course, feedback can help us grow. But you don't worship it. You don't let it build your identity. You take what's useful, leave what isn't, and ask yourself the deeper question. Did I live in alignment with my values? Because that is what truly belongs to you. That is what defines real self-respect. Even praise, yes. Even praise can become a trap. If you need it too much, you start chasing it. You soften your truth to keep others comfortable. You say what sounds good instead of what's real. You play roles and forget how to just be. Little by little, the applause that once lifted you up becomes a leash. You chase more not because it feels good, but because you don't know who you are without it. But the Stoic, the one who chooses inner power over outer validation, they live differently. They receive praise with humility, criticism with grace, but neither controls their identity, because they've anchored their worth in something unshakable, their own truth. And when the room is quiet, when the lights are off, and there's no one left to impress, they still respect who they are. That's where real freedom begins. So ask yourself, would I still make this choice, say these words, walk this path if no one ever praised it? And if someone harshly criticized it, would my confidence shatter? Or would it bend and stand firm? Because when both praise and criticism weigh the same in your heart, not emotionally, but in importance, you found something rare. You found stability. You found yourself. Lesson 6. Your value is self-created. Where do you believe your worth comes from? Most people never stop to ask. They just assume. Assume it comes from their title, their status, their family name, their education, appearance, wealth. They believe value is something to be earned, granted, or proven. You don't just let go of outside opinions. You reclaim your value from them completely. Your worth doesn't come from approval, not from a promotion, a job title, or a number on a screen, not from someone liking your post or inviting you to the table. Your value is self-created, forged through your choices, your consistency, your courage, and the way you respond when life doesn't go your way. But in the world we live in, that truth is easy to forget. Algorithms try to define us by how far we reach. Employers reduce us to productivity. Social circles label us based on trends, image, or noise. But real value, the kind that lasts, can't be measured by likes or follower counts. It can't be calculated by awards, praise, or external validation. It shows up quietly in how you carry yourself when nobody is watching. It lives in whether or not you respect the person staring back at you in the mirror. And only you can build that. Seneca once wrote, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it, and in wasting it, we delay becoming who we truly are." Let that sink in. You build your value not by what you intend, not by what you say, but by what you do consistently. Waking up early when sleeping in is tempting. Holding back anger when lashing out would feel good. Telling the truth when lies would protect your image. These invisible moments, those are the bricks of your worth. Let's get practical. A person who makes their bed, keeps their promises, reads, reflects, works out, shows up for their family, thinks before they speak, that person is quietly building value day by day. You may never see their name trending. They might not have the most polished resume, but when they walk into a room, you feel something. They don't need to perform. They don't need to prove. Their presence says it all. I've earned my own respect. And that's the kind of value no one can take from you. Now flip the coin. Someone who's constantly seeking validation from the outside. They're always vulnerable. One rejection, it breaks them. One failure, it shatters the image they were trying to protect. Why? Because they were performing, not living. They were building a mask, not a self. And that's not peace. It's performance. It's a fragile identity waiting to collapse. This is where Stoicism becomes more than just philosophy. It becomes a way of being. When you stop outsourcing your value, everything changes. You start setting higher standards for yourself. not from pride, but from purpose. You stop begging to be seen, because you already know who you are. You walk away from toxic places, not out of anger, but because they don't match your values anymore. Most importantly, you begin to guard your time, your focus, your energy, because you understand something most people don't. You've become valuable. You've become rare. And rare things deserve protection. So the next time you question your worth, don't look outward. Don't search the room for clues. Don't check a number. Don't wait for permission. Instead, look inward and ask, am I showing up in a way I admire? Am I becoming who I promised myself I'd be? If the answer is yes, your value is intact, even if no one sees it yet. And if the answer is no, good. That means you still have power. You're still the one in control. You still have time to build, to grow, to become. Because value isn't something to find. It's something you forge through fire, through truth, through daily self-respect. Lesson 7. Inner courage is quiet but unshakable. What comes to mind when you hear the word courage? For most, it's loud, bold, a grand moment of defiance, standing on a stage, leading a protest, risking it all. But most real courage doesn't look like that at all. What does courage look like when no one's watching? When no one agrees with you, when you feel completely alone in your conviction? That is inner courage. And in Stoic philosophy, it's one of the highest forms of strength. To the Stoics, courage isn't the absence of fear. It's not about feeling invincible or charging into battle. It's about doing what's right in alignment with your principles even when fear is fully present. Epictetus once said, "You may fetter my leg, but my will, not even Zeus himself, can overpower." What he's pointing to is this: there's a part of you that no one can touch. Not loss, not public shame, not betrayal, not failure. As long as you protect your will, your clarity, your inner compass, you've lost nothing that truly matters. Think about the courage it takes to speak the truth, even when staying silent would keep the peace. To walk away from something familiar because it no longer serves who you're becoming. To sit with discomfort, grief, fear, uncertainty instead of running from it. From the outside, these moments don't look heroic. There's no applause, no viral moment, no spotlight. But on the inside, these are battles. And when you choose principle over comfort, growth over ease, discipline over distraction, you win. Not in a way that the world can always see, but in a way you can feel deeply, fully. Imagine someone grieving, but still waking up early to keep their promises. Someone battling anxiety, but still stepping into discomfort to grow. Someone afraid of failure, but still putting their work into the world anyway. These aren't grand gestures, they're quiet rebellions against weakness. They are acts of integrity, and they change everything. The mistake many people make: they believe they have to feel strong before they act strong. That courage is something you wait for, some sudden surge of bravery or boldness. But Stoicism flips that completely. Courage is action in the absence of certainty. It's choosing the harder right over the easier wrong again and again until it becomes who you are. That's why it's rare. That's why it's powerful. And in real life, it doesn't look like movie scenes. It looks like standing your ground when others mock your boundaries, refusing to shrink yourself just to be accepted, choosing growth even if it means being misunderstood. Courage doesn't announce itself, but it transforms you. Because every time you act from courage, you build self-trust. And when you trust yourself, the opinions of others lose their grip. That's where true resilience is born. Not from appearing strong, but from being strong, silently, consistently. Without applause, the Stoic doesn't need a crowd to do the right thing. They don't need recognition to hold the line. They do it because it's right. And that quiet courage, it becomes a kind of armor, invisible, but impenetrable. So ask yourself, where in your life are you still waiting for permission to be brave? What choices are you avoiding because they might make you look foolish, or different, or alone? And what would happen if you started honoring your inner voice, even when it made others uncomfortable? Because courage doesn't always roar. Sometimes it's just a whisper, "I'll try again tomorrow." And sometimes that whisper is enough to change your life. Lesson 8. Build an inner citadel when everything around you feels unstable. Where do you go when people turn against you, when your plans fall apart, when nothing is working the way you hoped? What do you lean on? That's the question Stoicism wants you to answer before the storm comes. Because trying to build your strength during collapse is like trying to construct a house during a hurricane. So the Stoics taught, build your citadel. Now, the Stoics weren't talking about building a fortress of stone. They meant something far more powerful, a citadel within yourself, a sanctuary that lives in your mind, your spirit, your philosophy, one the outside world can't touch, and, therefore, can't destroy. Marcus Aurelius, in his Meditations, returned to this idea again and again. He wrote, people try to retreat to the country, to the beach, to the mountains. You can retreat into yourself anytime you want. What he's describing isn't a getaway. It's not about escaping to a quiet cabin or some scenic vista. It's about building a refuge within your soul, a place not protected by walls, but by discipline, not made of silence, but of clarity. And in a world that pulls at you constantly, with distractions, comparisons, expectations, and noise, that inner citadel, it's not a luxury, it's a necessity. So what does it really mean to build this inner fortress? It means training your mind to stay calm when emotions rise, strengthening your heart to remain steady when life disappoints, define your values so clearly that no external chaos can blur them. When you do this inner work consistently, you stop reacting to life and start responding with intention. You're no longer tossed around by the waves. You become the anchor beneath them. Let's bring it into real life. Suppose someone insults you in front of others. Do you lash out to protect your pride? Or do you pause, breathe, and respond with principle instead of ego? That pause, that space between stimulus and response, that is your citadel in action. Or imagine losing something deeply important, a job, a relationship, a dream. Do you unravel? Or do you remember that your value was never tied to an outcome, only to who you are in the process. That mindset, that's your stronghold. That's your internal power source. And like any true structure, a citadel is not built overnight. Every time you journal, reflect, meditate, every time you choose integrity over impulse, a brick is laid. Every time you keep your word to yourself, even when it hurts, the walls grow thicker. Each moment of honest self-inquiry, each uncomfortable truth you face instead of run from, your foundation deepens. But let's be clear, this isn't about emotional detachment. It's not about becoming cold or numb. The inner citadel isn't a shutdown. It's a source of strength, not emotional suppression, but emotional mastery. It's the difference between being ruled by life and walking through life with presence and control. It's what allows you to love without clinging, lead without arrogance, without falling apart. And here's the hard truth. No one can build this citadel for you. Not a book, not a mentor, not even Stoicism itself. It must be built through lived experience, by showing up every day and proving to yourself that you are stronger than your worst day, that you are steady not because life is easy, but because your core is solid. So ask yourself, what does my citadel look like? Is it built on unshakable principles or shallow, shifting beliefs? Do I run to it when things fall apart, or have I forgotten it's even there? Because make no mistake, the storms will come. That much is guaranteed. But whether they destroy you or refine you, that depends on what you've built inside. And once you've truly built it, you'll discover something profound. No matter what happens out there, you are already home. Lesson 9. Daily reflection is power. When was the last time you sat with yourself? Not just to think, but to truly reflect. Not to scroll, not to escape, not to solve a problem, but to quietly examine your day, your actions, your reactions. In today's world of constant motion, reflection feels like a lost art. But the Stoics knew something we've almost forgotten. Without reflection, there can be no real growth, because what you don't observe, you repeat. And what you don't understand ends up controlling you. Seneca understood this deeply. He wrote, "Each day I examine my conscience. I look back over my actions and words, and reread the whole day." And this wasn't just some ritual for the sake of routine. It was power. The power to become a better human being one day at a time. Not through dramatic, life-altering leaps, but through small, consistent, deliberate corrections. That's the beauty of daily reflection. It humbles you without humiliating you. It challenges you without shaming you. It invites you to meet yourself honestly, and then to choose better. Reflection isn't about guilt. It's not about dwelling on the past or beating yourself up. It's about responsibility. It's about asking questions that most people avoid. Where did I act from strength today? Where did I fall into weakness? What patterns am I repeating without noticing? What emotions ruled my behavior? And most importantly, what will I do differently tomorrow? These questions don't just make you wise. They make you accountable. And in a world where blame is fashionable, where it's easier to point fingers than look inward, accountability becomes a radical form of power. Let's make this Practical. Imagine ending each day with just 5 quiet minutes. No phone, no noise, no judgment. Just you and your thoughts. You replay a conversation and realize you interrupted someone out of insecurity. You revisit a moment of anger and recognize it wasn't strength, but fear that drove it. You remember something you did well, and instead of brushing it off, you pause and honor it. That's it. 5 minutes of clarity. And that small pause, it starts shaping the next day. You catch yourself sooner. You respond instead of react. You begin to move from automatic to aware. And over time, that awareness becomes something deeper. It becomes identity. You no longer just try to live with integrity. You become someone who does, naturally. Not because you're perfect, but because you're honest. You face your flaws without running from them. You learn from your missteps without shame. You grow without needing the world to notice or applaud it. That's the quiet revolution of daily reflection. Invisible on the surface, but powerful and transformational beneath it. And it gives you something else. Peace. When you've reflected deeply, you sleep differently. Your mind doesn't spin with unresolved conversations. Your heart isn't tangled in regrets you never faced, because you've already met the day. You looked it in the eye and either made peace with it or made a plan to improve. That kind of clarity, that's rare. That's freedom. So ask yourself now, what did I learn about myself today? If the answer is nothing, it's not because nothing happened. It's because you weren't fully present enough to see it. But here's the good news. Tomorrow is another chance. Reflection isn't a luxury. It's a necessity, because life moves fast, but growth real, lasting, personal growth requires stillness. It requires honesty. And above all, it requires you. Lesson 10. Vulnerability is a strength when you own it. What if the very thing you're hiding is actually the key to your greatest strength? Most of us are taught to wear armor, emotional armor, psychological armor, even spiritual armor. We're trained to appear composed, put together, unshaken. We learn early that showing too much fear, too much doubt, too much truth might invite judgment, or worse, rejection. Here's the truth. Suppression is not strength. It's a slow erosion of the soul. The Stoics never taught us to deny our emotions. They taught us to master them. And mastery doesn't begin with control. It begins with awareness. You can't rise above something you refuse to face. Seneca said it powerfully. He who is brave is free. But bravery doesn't mean you pretend to have no fear. It doesn't mean silence or smiling through pain. Bravery means looking fear in the eye and saying, "You don't get to own me." And when you do that, when you fully own your vulnerability, it stops being weakness. It becomes honesty. And in a world addicted to appearances and perfection, honesty is rare and powerful. Imagine this. You're overwhelmed. You're anxious. You feel lost or uncertain. But instead of hiding it, you name it. First to yourself, then, maybe, to someone. You trust. Not to seek pity, not to be dramatic, but to take ownership of what is real inside you. And something shifts. You're no longer running from the feeling. You're standing in it, fully present, fully grounded. That shift, that confrontation is where transformation begins. It's where clarity returns, because the moment you stop pretending, you free up all the energy you were using to maintain the illusion. Owning your vulnerability is also an act of maturity. Children hide. Adults face. Children deny. Adults integrate. But don't confuse vulnerability with oversharing. It doesn't mean telling everyone everything. It means having the courage to be real with yourself and with those who've earned the right to. Witness your truth, and when you do, something unexpected happens. You become more resilient. Not because you avoid pain, but because you've walked through it. You've faced it before. You've learned that pain doesn't destroy you. It builds you. Let's bring this down to real life. Suppose you've made a mistake at work, in a relationship, in a moment of emotion. The easy route: deflect, justify, pretend it didn't matter. But the strong route, the Stoic route: own it, plainly, simply. That was on me. No self-punishment. No theatrics, just clarity. That act of ownership is vulnerability in action. And it earns respect not just from others, but from yourself. It also unlocks something deeper: connection. Because people don't bond through perfection. They bond through shared humanity, through the admission of struggle, the confession of doubt, the quiet honesty of, I don't have it all figured out, but I'm trying. That's not weakness. That's leadership. That's real presence. It creates space for others to be honest, too. And here's the paradox: the more you own your vulnerability, the less vulnerable you become. Not because the emotions disappear, but because they no longer control you. You've met them, named them, integrated them, and what once felt like chaos becomes insight. What once felt like shame becomes wisdom. So ask yourself, what am I still hiding from myself? What part of me needs to be seen not by the world, but by me? Because pretending to be strong is exhausting, but being real, being grounded, being whole, that's where your true power lives. And that power, it begins the moment you stop running from your truth and start walking with it. Lesson 11. Resilience means using pain as fuel. What if your greatest strength was hiding inside your worst moment? Pain changes people, but how it changes you, that's a choice. Some let it break them, some let it shape them, and some use it to build something unshakable. What do you do with the pain? You use it. That's where resilience is born. In Stoicism, resilience isn't just about surviving the storm. It's about becoming someone wiser, stronger, and more grounded because of the storm. It's not endurance for endurance's sake. It's not suffering just to prove something. It's transformation through the fire. Marcus Aurelius said it best: the impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. At first glance, that might sound poetic, but it's not just a quote, it's a challenge. What if every obstacle in your path was a hidden teacher? What if your heartbreak was shaping your compassion, your failure was sharpening your focus, your rejection was strengthening your boundaries? Most people wait for pain to pass. The Stoic doesn't. The Stoic leans into it and asks, what is this here to teach me? Because pain is information. It shows you where you're attitude, where you've become complacent, where you've lost perspective. And when you stop resisting it, when you start listening, something powerful happens. You stop seeing yourself as a victim of life. You start becoming the sculptor of your strength. You carve resilience from discomfort. You extract meaning from chaos. You find direction in the heart of despair. Think about the most resilient people you know. Are they untouched by pain? Of course not. They've walked through fire and emerged not harder but clearer, not bitter but boundaried. Their eyes say, I've seen things. I've lost things, but I didn't lose myself. That's resilience. Not the absence of wounds, but the refusal to be defined by them. Let's bring this down to earth. You've been betrayed. It hurts. You have a choice. Close your heart forever, or open it again with discernment. You failed publicly. Shame hits. You have a choice. Avoid all risks, or rise again wiser this time. You feel lost. Nothing makes sense. You have a choice. Distract yourself endlessly, or sit with the discomfort until it reveals something deeper. These aren't cinematic, dramatic moments. They happen quietly, in your car, lying awake at night, in the stillness between who you were and who you're becoming. Resilience is forged in that space. Not when everything is certain, not when life feels easy, but when you're unsure, afraid, uncertain, and you still choose to show up. You still choose to act with courage, to believe in something greater than your passing emotions, to rise. That's how pain becomes fuel, not by ignoring it, but by alchemizing it. By turning suffering into strength. And here's the truth. No one escapes pain. Not the strong, not the wise, not even the Stoics. But what sets them apart is how they use it. They don't see pain as punishment. They see it as practice, as sharpening, as preparation. And that mindset shift, it doesn't make life easier, but it makes you stronger. So, the next time life brings you to your knees, remember this. It's okay to feel it, to cry, to fall apart, but don't stop there. Don't get stuck in the story of defeat. Ask yourself, how can I grow from this? Who is this pain asking me to become? Because if you let it, your pain can become the very path that sets you free. Lesson 12. Focus on your path, not their reactions. Woes approval. Are you still chasing? That question might sting, but sit with it. Because if you're not careful, your whole life can turn into a performance for an invisible audience. Your life is yours, and your path must be walked by you, not shaped by them. When you start growing, some people will misunderstand your silence. They'll twist your words. They'll support you until your evolution reminds them of their own stagnation. Others will resist your growth entirely, not because you've wronged them, but because your transformation threatens the comfort of who they thought you were. And if your direction depends on their reactions, you'll be lost in a maze of invisible expectations forever. Epictetus warned us, if you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid. Because the world doesn't often applaud deep, personal growth. It celebrates what's familiar, what's comfortable, what's easy to define. But real growth doesn't fit in boxes. It requires walking unfamiliar paths, sometimes alone, often misunderstood. And that's okay. You are not here to be understood by everyone. You are here to be true to yourself. Picture your life as a road. Some people will walk with you. Some will fall behind. Some will question every step you take. And none of that is your responsibility to fix. Your responsibility is to stay committed to your path, to your values, to your becoming. When you do this, something incredible happens. The noise doesn't vanish, but it no longer dictates your direction. You begin choosing your next step based on clarity, not approval. You pursue goals even when they confuse others. You set boundaries even when they upset people. You honor your truth even when it costs you connection. Because the alternative, living as a mirror for other people's comfort, that's not a life. That's a slow death of authenticity. And don't confuse this with arrogance. This isn't about rejecting others. It's about refusing to reject yourself just to be accepted. It's about building a relationship with your own voice so strong that even the loudest critics can't drown it out. The Stoic life isn't emotional numbness. It's emotional independence. You can love people without living for their approval. You can hear feedback without abandoning your center. You can be open to growth without becoming a reflection of everyone else's needs. That is strength. That is maturity. So here's the question. If no one clapped, if no one agreed, if no one said a word, would you still walk this path? If the answer is yes, then you found something rare. A life rooted in self-respect. A direction powered by purpose. A journey guided not by reaction, but by reason. And that kind of life, it doesn't just lead to success. It leads to freedom. So now you know. You don't need applause. You don't need permission. You don't need to explain your journey to those who were never meant to walk it with you. What you need is alignment. Not with the crowd, but with your soul. Because real strength, it doesn't come from being seen. It comes from standing firm when no one is watching. And real peace, it's not found in being praised. It's found in becoming someone you don't need to escape from. The Stoics never promised this would be easy, but they promised it would be worth it. They taught us we are not at the mercy of opinions. We are not victims of chaos. We are the architects of our character. The builders of our inner citadel. And every day you get to choose. Stay small and safe, or rise quietly, intentionally, with discipline and purpose. So don't wait for life to reward you. Become the reward. Live with such clarity that praise feels unnecessary, with such integrity that criticism feels irrelevant, and with such purpose that distraction feels impossible. Because in the end, nobody truly cares as much as you think they do. And that is your freedom. Now, focus on your life and build it into something that doesn't just impress others, but makes you proud. If this episode gave you clarity, strength, or just something to reflect on, share it with someone who needs this message. And if you're walking your own quiet, powerful path, I see you. Keep going. Like, share, and subscribe to Stoic Capsule for more reminders that your greatest power has always lived within you.